And we are now live.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight for our community conversation on race. My name is Mary Watts Sparks, and I'm the Deputy Director for Community Action Partnership. And I'm really honored to be able to host this panel tonight. This is a really important conversation and a really different one that we've had in the past. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Georgia Leah Moses and her case. And we have the honor of having her sister, Angel Turner, with us and their family advocate, Maria Martin. So before I have them introduce themselves, I want to talk a little bit about why we're having this conversation tonight. Georgia was found dead in 1997 in August in Petaluma, California, and her murder goes unsolved. And we want tonight to be an opportunity for Angel, her sister, to speak about how Georgia was and give her narrative and her story, and also bring some advocacy to Georgia's life, and really want to be able to try to find justice for Georgia. It's never too late. And as Angel termed recently, justice has no expiration date. And I think that's a really good thing for us to remember and to just be an advocate for Georgia. So I'm going to talk a little bit about her case, and then we'll have Angel and Maria introduce themselves. So it's been over 2 decades and her case still remains unsolved. And on August 22nd, 1997, a Caltrans worker was attending to a broken guardrail off of Highway 101 in Petaluma, California, and found a decomposing body of an African-American girl just off the road. The body was left nude. Georgia was last seen the night of August 13th. And after the discovery of the body and with no leads to who she was, an anonymous tip was submitted stating that it could possibly be Georgia. The deceased girl had braids, and so did Georgia. And Georgia also had not been seen or heard from for over a week, which was unusual. One of Georgia's friends was the only witness the last time Georgia was seen alive. And that friend stated that Georgia hung out with her in the night of August 13th. Georgia received a page on her pager and called the number back. Sometime after that, a friend walked Georgia to a nearby gas station where Georgia was left with a man. The friend said Georgia later called her to let her know she would not be back for the night, and that was the last contact that Georgia made. Before we discuss more about this, I just want to say that if we refer to the police, we're actually referring to the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department and that department only. And if we say suspect, it's a person of interest. We're not lawyers or police officers here, and we just want to we want to explain there is no named suspect in this case. So if we do say that, we mean person of interest. So with that being said, I'd like Angel to introduce herself, and then we'll move it to Maria.
Well, hey, hello everyone. I'm Angel. I am the younger sister of Georgia. When she was murdered, I was 7, so we're 5 years apart. And I'm just here to bring awareness to her case and hopefully get it solved sooner than later.
Thank you, Angel. Maria?
Hi, I'm Maria. Some of you may know me. I'm from Cotati. I can't see who's on here, so I don't know who would. But I started working with Angel back in November. And we have been doing a lot of feet on the ground work and a lot of social media, bringing awareness, reaching out to various different media outlets, ones that we like. I have done advocacy work in varying degrees for the last little less than a decade. I've worked all over the world with different nonprofit organizations, and it just made a lot of sense being from Sonoma County, hearing this case my whole life. My father worked for the Sheriff's Department at the time of Georgia's passing. And so having a closeness with this story, knowing a lot of the same people that Georgia did without actually having a closeness to Georgia herself, it kind of put me in a position that I'm sure a lot of the other advocates that are here working with us to find justice, the ones that were not her close friends, ones that were not part of her family, we're in a similar position where we have an outsider's perspective and a need to support Angel in a way that she had not been supported before. With my, like, I guess that's it. I was gonna say with my previous career choices, I have, marketing experience and things like that and entertainment experience. So it just worked out that when I reached out to Angel, she needed some things that I had. So we were able to piece together a really nice now family type relationship. And I'm really happy to be working for her and with her.
Thank you. Thank you both for agreeing to participate with us tonight. I just wanted to start off and ask Angel, if there was one thing that you would want the world to know about your sister, what would that be?
It would be first and foremost that my sister mattered then and she matters now. With the media being the biggest, I guess, voice for my sister over the years, there was this constant narrative of her being a poor Black girl and being a victim of her circumstances. And honestly, I don't feel like any of that has any relevance to the fact that my sister was murdered at the age of 12. And even with the stories that were written, there wasn't like an urgency to have her murder solved. And I just feel like there was so much that was overshadowed in the fact that her life was taken. And to her friends, her family, she was such a beacon of light. If you go on Facebook and you read the stories that are shared about her, everyone has the same story about how, she was just somebody that you really never encountered before. She loved helping people. I actually encountered some of her friends that, they shared stories about how she would stick up for them, if somebody bullied them or, they had different views from other people, she did not hesitate to step in on their behalf and just be like their guardian. And to be 12 and be remembered by majority of the people that, knew her in a way that wasn't portrayed by the media, I feel like they took the matter aspect out of telling my sister's story. Technically we're all victims of circumstance, but we have the ability to rise above. Unfortunately, my sister didn't because somebody chose to murder her. And no matter what the narrative is, if that's not the focus, then you're not doing my sister justice. So
I think that, you started to touch on the media and the narrative around your sister and when you look up your sister on Google, you see different stories that come up and the titles of some of these stories just don't seem to really do what you're saying, is give that narrative around who killed your sister. And so one title said something, a recent article, I think it was CBS, it said something about a woman, a woman was murdered and you said your sister was 12 years old. And so that narrative is so important to getting justice. Is there, can we talk a little bit about how the media, how you feel the media portrayed your sister that's not accurate, and what you would kind of rewrite for it? And then Maria, if you want to jump in, feel free to.
I feel like there's a lot of factors that made my sister not relevant enough to do the due justice of writing a good story. I did journalism in the military and I've always had a passion for writing. And so to see these stories that were written, it really, at first it confused me. It actually didn't really start making sense until last year, because I'm an honest person. So when I see a story, the first thing I think is, okay, well, who gave you this information to portray something that's not true? Not knowing that these people chose to write these untrue stories. And then the fact that my sister was 12, she was murdered, to add to those negative situations and go beyond that to create more of a negative narrative, it just goes to the character of those people that wrote those stories. My sister, she was love, you know, if I had to sum it up in one word. And, you know, it's really unfortunate that people did not take the opportunity to get to know my sister, or even get to know some of her friends or interview her friends to find out who she was, to write a story that would portray her in a positive light. Um, Recently for myself, there was an article that I found, that was written, and it did a lot of victim blaming. And then it went on to have a lot of personal narratives as far as where my sister would have, where her life would have turned out had she lived. All negative scenarios, you know, going to juvie, being in a rehabilitative type scenario. And then it went on to suggest that maybe people like my mom shouldn't be having children. And it's like, and that person obviously, you know, worked with the media. And I feel like the media has a lot of power to either uplift or destroy, because that's where we get our information. And if what they're putting out is not uplifting, not telling the truth, not stating facts, not trying to create a solution to a problem, then they are the problem. You know, I remember the first time I actually Googled my sister, I actually had just moved to Fort Hood. So it was 2009, right at 2009, 2010. And like all the stories were the same, you know, just victim blaming. And for me, I had such a strong connection with my sister. What I was reading didn't match with what I remembered. So I just stopped looking until that urge came up again. And it was just this constant back and forth of all that's out there are negative stories, you know. So to have a person that is so positive be constantly depicted in a negative manner, it did not make sense, you know, and it still doesn't make sense. So the only thing I can suggest is that people that have power in the words that they put together, they need to be mindful of the families that they're speaking for. You know, for me, I'm, you know, my brothers, they had their own way of healing and dealing. Um, my mom, she doesn't know what the internet is. So I've kind of been burdened with trying to be the hub of information for everyone, and to constantly be hit with lies is like, for what? You know, if that was their child, how would you feel if somebody blamed them for being murdered at 12? When my sister isn't the only 12-year-old that is murdered, you know, and it doesn't matter if she's Black, if she's white, if she's rich, if she's poor, it doesn't matter anything, because she's not here today because somebody was evil enough to end her life.
I mean,
Maria?
there was a lot that you said. I don't know, Maria, if there's anything you want to add to that.
I mean, I can just piggyback off of that. So a couple of the things, and Angel touched on this already, but a couple of the things that keep coming up, and it's not just in the media, it is also with our experience with the Sheriff's Department, is that the conversation around Georgia treats her not just as like a troubled youth, or, you know, someone who was destined for this kind of situation, but they treat her as an adult a lot, which is so damaging. So it's hard to put into words how damaging that is. For example, two different representatives of the Sheriff's Department who we've spoken to referred to her lifestyle, right? They referred to it as a lifestyle. 12-year-olds don't have lifestyles. They don't. They are products of their situation. They do not have lifestyles. They don't have chosen, they might have, you know, haircuts they like, or, you know, bands they're into, but they don't have lifestyles. That's not it. So saying that she had a lifestyle of, you know, they referred to some things that may or may not have happened before she died, as she was into prostitution or she was into hanging out at night. She's not, first of all, there's no such thing as a child prostitute. There is no such thing. You are a rape victim or you are being trafficked. There is no such thing as consent from a child, period. So to be referred to as that is an adult's choice. And that is the people who are in charge of this child's life now, because that's who is being put in charge of it, is the media and the sheriff's department and anybody who can move this case forward. Referring to her in such adult ways, again, like lifestyle or this or that. And then even in the media recently as last month, her being referred to as a woman, and taking away the kidness, taking away the hopscotch and the braiding her sister's hair and teaching her how to swim, taking away all these moments that a 12-year-old's reality is for something that occurred in the last couple of months of her life, as this is what her whole life was. It's such a disservice, and it paints such a picture of this is an adult person who made choices and their choices were bad, so we don't have to care. And that's just not the reality of the situation. It's dehumanizing, and it really teaches the public at large that these are the types of people we don't have to care about, regardless of race, regardless of age. But in this instance, we're talking about her age. And so, yeah, I guess that was the piggybacking, like she said, it's dangerous. It creates this air of keep scrolling or flip the page, or I've heard this story before,
And yeah, it doesn't matter what anyone's age or race or anything. I mean, a 12-year-old is a child no matter what the circumstances. And I think that, you talked about lifestyle and I'm a little bit familiar because I've done some, talking to you guys or looking up your sister's, life. But for those people who don't have that information, Angel, can you tell us about what your life was like with your sister, and especially in Sonoma County, and just talk a little bit about what it was like?
Yeah, so my life was actually like really good. And I'll refer more to like 97 since that was like the major year. But we didn't have a lot of money. We were poor, I guess. I was sexually abused. My mom, she was a bipolar schizophrenic. But even with those things, I didn't know that, because my sister made sure that despite what our world entailed, that I would be loved for, I would be cared for. She was my constant, she taught me how to swim. She taught me how to tie my shoes. She made sure that no matter how people treated me, that I was still being respectful, being nice, being kind. She instilled those things. And, my mom was there too, and she did her share of, trying, but she was in and out mentally. So even on those days where, my mom didn't get up and cook, my sister cooked. She couldn't cook much, but, she made sure that I wasn't hungry. If I was doing good in school, or if, there was something that made her proud, she would walk me to the candy store and give me, some quarters. I can get some candy. She just really, she sheltered me from the reality of the evils of the world, to the best of her ability, which it was a lot, so she was just, she was wonderful. I used to think that I was just that kid that was like, oh, my big sister, but in talking to her friends, it was like, no, like she just really was a wonderful person. And even at her age of 12 and way before then, she just took me on as her child and made sure that no matter what, I was cared for. Even in her last months, she didn't live with us because she was kicked out by my mom's boyfriend. but she still came back to walk me to the park, to do my hair, to just play with me. So, for her to be 12 and take on such a large responsibility and not even care that it was taken away from her life, that says a lot about who she was,
Well, it seems like you're doing that for her now.
Yeah.
Being her protector.
Do you
Maria?
care if I share one story that was shared with Angel and I both, actually?
Yeah.
So something that really stood out to me when we had first started interviewing friends was one of her, I apologize. I have a 6-year-old at home right now who doesn't understand how important this is. So I'm sorry if she jumps into the background at all. But we were interviewing one of her friends, and she had explained to us that she'd been friends with Georgia for years, and that never once had Georgia ever spent the night at her house because it was so important for her to be close with Angel and to make sure that Angel was taken care of. And then one night she did. And during this sleepover, it was really funny because they were getting in trouble for something. So the other friend's mom was standing at one end of the hall, yelling at them about something. And Georgia was just out of view of the mom, dancing around and making these hilarious noises and like being really quiet and doing these funny hand motions and stuff to try and get her friend to laugh while she's being yelled at. So, it's this youthful, silly, lovely side of this person that keeps getting forgotten. And I think it's important to not just remember that amongst her friends and loved ones, but like even for me, who again, I didn't know Georgia in life, but I feel like I knew that person, I knew that silly, funny 12-year-old. And what a cool experience for Angel and her friends to actually have really gotten to know that person. I just wanted to share because it was such a nice, it's a nice statement to how much she really cared so much about Angel, that first time she spent the night at someone else's house in forever, it was ages into their friendship because she just wanted to be home with her sister. I think that's super cool.
I mean, I think that, these stories is what also humanizes compared to what we've been able to read or hear about. And I think it's really important that these are shared. But I think there's, can you kind of go a little bit into the case, Angel and Maria, and kind of talk about, what happened from like August 13th and on a little bit, and whatever you're comfortable sharing and whatever you don't want to. Of course, you don't have to talk about it, but.
Okay, so I didn't know at the time, but my sister's funeral, which I want to say was like September, October timeframe, it wasn't too long after she was found. She wasn't actually there. It was a closed casket funeral. And I remember like I was really itching just to open it just because I didn't believe she was gone, I didn't know what being murdered was. And, she was such a constant. It wasn't fathomable to think that she's no longer here. So I kept trying to like open it and they're like, no, she doesn't look presentable. But so I really didn't believe that she was gone. It wasn't until last year where I came across an article where I saw that she actually, the county held her body for almost a year before actually burying her. So unfortunately, I didn't get that closure of actually being at a funeral where she was present. As far as her case, I don't want to make the sheriff's department out to be the bad guys completely. I do believe in accountability, but I do believe that when it comes to the justice system, there are a lot of flaws. And with that being said, I feel like those flaws led to not properly investigating throughout the years. I was informed that when my sister was first missing, the police department actually came to my house around the time she was gone, but they came to question me about my mom's boyfriend, who was a convicted sex offender. Um, and at that time, I had brought up my sister because I hadn't seen her. And so that's actually the tip that was submitted that was able to identify my sister. But for some time, they were so focused on my mom's boyfriend. And I feel like the fact that my sister's friend saw her get into a car with somebody, in addition to other details about some of the friends that she hung out with, um, he would have been easily cleared. Plus, the alibi situation. But as Maria will probably say, they had tunnel vision where they were so focused on this person, time was wasted in not pursuing possible suspects. And now we're at a place where such minimal effort has been put into the case where I've actually fed the police or the sheriff's department possible suspects, possible leads as to, this situation occurred, this situation occurred. And all I keep getting is, okay, well, we'll look into it when we get time. The first time in probably 2 or 3 years that I reached out to the sheriff's department again, I had question about where the case was and the reward money and some other things. And this was May, and they told me that they would get back to me. It wasn't until September that a newly assigned detective, as of that day that that phone call was made, was assigned to the case. So months had passed without even giving me hey, this is where your sister's case is. This is like no information. They didn't have any priority in sharing details about my sister's case with me. And that has been a constant with multiple people that have tried to get my sister's case moved forward, leads, other things. One of my sister's friends, she had, once the sketch came out of the last person that my sister was with, she had submitted a, hey, this is who that person could be. And I want to say this was like 2 or 3 years after my sister was murdered. And she said that the police just brushed her off because she was 16 and pregnant. And it's crazy to think that her murder could have been solved had certain due diligence have been done. They didn't care then and they don't care now. And they can put out a post or do a conference and say that they do, but all you can go by is the actions. To me, which is something that I had to learn more so over the last year because, I've had to fight so much, is that talk is cheap. And no matter how much you say something matters, all I see is that I'm doing your job, and it shouldn't be that way.
No. Maria, is there anything else about the case that you want to add? Especially, I mean, you never know who could be listening or anything that might help.
Yeah. So with what she was saying, how one of Georgia's friends had put together a flyer and reached out, even started a petition to get the sheriff's department to reopen the investigation. As you said in the beginning, we're not lawyers, so I'm not 100% sure how the FOIAs work. And I mean, I know that you can pull them and certain information is always available and whatever, but we had been working with some people who had a PI try to pull them, and that was unsuccessful. Over the years, a few friends have tried to pull them, that was unsuccessful. So as far as we knew, the case had been moved into the cold case realm, which would have made, I mean, I'm not sure if that would have made things public at that point, but I do know that some years ago, someone was successful in pulling the Freedom of Information Act paperwork, but now that's not being allowed any longer. The problem with that we see, especially Angel and I have spoken about a couple of times, is that there is no movement as far as we know. And every time we try to reach out, it seems like the movement that is happening is done by Angel, myself, her other advocates, her friends. I mean, her friends have been on this for years. I mean, since it happened, there's been like the golden three that have never stopped. And they absolutely deserve a million miles of credit because my goodness, I couldn't imagine doing this for over 2 decades to have every door shut and every, okay, thanks kid, we'll get back to you when we have time from every direction. And so, so a lot of the work that they've been doing all these years and now that Angel and I are doing, the momentum that we've built seems to be the only thing that is moving. So the sheriff's department put out a PR statement. In the beginning of their PR statement, they said, I'm sure you've heard of this story recently. It's like, yeah, they've heard of it because we did that. Her friends did that. Her family did that. Her advocates did that. That's problematic. That, you got to have a hashtag and be trending. That you got to, have X amount of followers for a job that should have been continuing this whole time to continue, and then to block people who are trying to help get that momentum into a case moving forward it's difficult to contend with. It's really difficult to contend with.
So is the case is considered open currently?
Right now, yes.
And has there been, do you have a contact at the sheriff's department that is currently that is assigned to the case at least?
I do. I have a contact with a detective who's part of the violent crimes unit. And I have at least 2 emails where I've submitted him information and, asked questions about certain things. And each time he said that he hasn't yet looked at all the case files. As recent as January when they put out, it was around my sister's birthday, where I submitted, some information and asked some questions. And he told me that my sister's case isn't a priority because active cases take priority, which I understand. But he went on to say that, when he gets time, he'll look into it, and he has yet to look at her case files. So my thing is, if you're an entity that is charged with solving crimes and you have a case that has been unsolved for decades, at what point, and this isn't even factoring in all the issues that we've had with them, at what point do you outsource? I reached out to the FBI and they told me that the police department would have to hand over the case, which I know is not going to happen because it's going to make them look even worse. But, for them to not return emails, phone calls readily, I post a lot of cold case groups on Facebook, and one of the page startup people, she put me in contact, or she reached out to a lab that could possibly help the department, and they've had proven cases that were solved using DNA. And they reached out to the police department in December and early December, and by mid-January, the police or the sheriff still had not returned a phone call, returned the email. Since they have, said that they would look to see if there's any DNA that can be tested, but that's only because they've been blasted. We shouldn't have to force them to do what they're supposed to be doing. Like, you get paid. This is what you're paid to do. And like I said, if they're not equipped to do it, then put somebody else on it.
So you mentioned, so there's no cold case unit type of option in at the Sonoma Sheriff's Office. So relinquishing the case would be the only way to get someone else to basically have jurisdiction over it, is what it seems to be. Okay. Yeah. So is there, you mentioned DNA. Is there, have there ever been, besides your mother's boyfriend, like persons of interest that they have pursued, or has it just been kind of a dead There's been no leads after that.
Angel, you want
Um,
this one? Are you good?
I'll start and then you can piggyback. From my knowledge, there was one other person, well, possibly two, one that fit this sketch description. Then there was another person who could have been a suspect just off of proximity, but that wasn't followed up on completely as they were pursuing another case for that person who is currently imprisoned. So.
Yeah.
Maria, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, to elaborate on that. So from our understanding, and this is from multiple interviews that we've done with both law enforcement and with the general public. When I say that, I mean like her friends and family, people that were close to her and the case at the time. With multiple interviews that we've done, law enforcement had these periodic people of interest, and there wasn't a lot of people all at once. There was, like Angel said earlier, there was a lot of tunnel vision on this one person, and that went on for a few years. And then when it got handed over to the next person who we've had a few discussions with, this person is absolutely wonderful and helping us as much as he can. I was going to say as much as they can, but as much as he can. They let us know that he had checked out a person who matched the sketch, which is one of two people that we're aware of that matched the sketch dead on. And that person, he did not believe was a part of anything. Then there was a second person that he became aware of. That's the person that she was talking about that was in jail, and that they were unable to like get any sort of, not confession, but just any sort of anything from him because he was already on trial for something else. And so, not wanting to case stack on himself, he stayed pretty mum about it. But this person was pretty sure that person at least knew, if he wasn't the one who did it, he at least knew who was involved. So again, all these people are people of interest, not necessarily suspects. I'm not sure who they actually put in the suspect pool, but there were 3 viables between 1997 and 2006. If they are still viable, we're not totally sure. There seems to be a belief with the cold case officer that had it back then that there is this one person who should absolutely be a suspect. So we have kind of been looking into that a little bit. We've also been told of a couple other people from friends and family that would possibly have some involvement or some knowledge of what happened at the time. So whether or not law enforcement is taking those tips seriously, we're not totally sure. Or if they've looked into them, we're not totally sure. But we have passed that information along.
It kind of, what we talked about earlier, we talked about the media and talked about kind of the failure on their part. And I think, Angel, you said that sometimes people refer to like a victim of circumstance. And it seems like really the circumstances, a lot of systems that are failing that could have done something, whether it was before or after the murder of your sister. Is, we talked about the media and the sheriffs. Is there any other aspects that you feel really could have been there to support, whether it was, to make sure that your sister was alive or after the fact to find justice for her? I know that's a big question.
So, and go down the list.
Seriously, this long.
Yeah, so in addition to the Sheriff's Department and the media, there's Child Protective Services. I can recall a few different instances where I was placed in a group home, the county group home, and each time I was given back to my mom. I didn't know until recently that my mom actually would give us to the group home or give us over to the state because she felt like she could not properly care for us, which is a noble thing to do, being a mother. But for this state to constantly give us back, it doesn't make any sense. I was 7 and I was aware that, my mom had moments. I can recall a few instances where she had hallucinations and, but that was just my norm. So to look back and to be a mother myself and see that there was an entity that was created for those type of scenarios, and for them to just constantly give us back, it didn't make sense, and it still doesn't make sense. And unfortunately, we're not the only family that has been failed by CPS, especially in the state of California. And then there's also the school. It was said that my sister told the school that she wasn't coming back because she had to care for me and my mom, which I feel like she chose not to go back because she started missing school because she didn't have a place to stay. And what 12-year-old wants to repeat the grade with your friends, and now you're a year behind. But for them to say that and not contact somebody to say, hey, this 12-year-old is not going to school because she has to take care of her family, like at what point does the school step in?
When they're mandatory reporters.
Hmm?
They're mandatory reporters, schools.
Right. And then one of her friends who was, I believe she was on the school council, she said that after my sister passed, that she put up flyers around the school, just to remember my sister. And the school told her that she had to take them down because my sister wasn't an active member of the school council. And so, yet again, you have an entity that instead of remembering one of your students, she had friends that were affected. They couldn't even have conversations in the gym. They couldn't even grieve collectively because what was going on mattered more than remembering their murdered friend. So, sorry. So yeah, the school. There's also the district attorney's office. It said that they had refused to file charges in April as well as August, as in charges for new sex offenses against my mom's boyfriend, which is really telling because I believe my sister was kicked out around March. And so if the DA had word of there being a sex offender in the house, that means somebody reported or said something about that sex offender and her no longer being at home. So for them to not move in April and not move again in the beginning of August, the district attorney's office, that played a big role in her being murdered a few weeks later. Because had we been taken from the home, there would have been stability. So.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that, in addition to all of the named entities that were there, there was also the place where she did find somewhere to stay, where had she been removed from the home at that time, or anybody had stepped in at that time, she would have had a stable address. She would have had any number of things in place that would have prevented the bouncing and bouncing and bouncing from address to address to address. We haven't confirmed yet 100% where she was staying at the time of her passing. But we're pretty sure we know, but we're not 100%. But at that point, when we spoke to officers and various other people who were aware of her situation at the time during these interviews, a lot of them were hearing that she wasn't living at home for the first time when we reached out to them 23 years after the fact. That was the first time that a lot of these people and entities even knew that she was not at home. Like, that is just an all systems fail, hit the red button on the wall kind of situation, because how was this 12-year-old not living at home for 4 months almost without a single adult in her life, like the mandatory reporters that were in and out of her life at the time, checking up on any of it.
And the constant narrative is she would come and go. And it situations like that really make me lose hope in the justice system because, I think I've always been intrigued by the whole investigative type process, which works to my benefit now. But I'm just thinking back to when I was 7 and I'm like, well, who did you guys talk to? Like, I feel like obviously somebody knew something if there was, a report that should have been filed, but it wasn't filed in April to say, hey, there's a sex offender there. Like that's information that somebody had to share with, so what other information were you privy to? But at what, like, who did you talk to? Who did you cross-reference? Because I just look back to how life was and, I could probably name 2 or 3 people as to where my sister was, and even my mom, she, they're like, oh, why didn't she report her missing? My mom thought she was with that person, a family friend, which, I can say she was there, but, we don't like to blame people that aren't yet fully validated. But for you to be detectives and just overlook so much information, it is really careless, like.
Or the Child Protective Services or the DA or any number of people who knew that she had this situation going on at the time. And just to add, like, it didn't totally matter. I mean, it matters to the case, but it doesn't totally matter where she was staying at the time. The adults in the home of whatever house she was at between March and August, or multiple homes even, had a responsibility to inform her parents, had a responsibility to inform anybody that, hey, we have this 12-year-old who's staying on our couch. She's 12 and she's crashing on our couch. And I'm not sure her mom knows where she is. I'm not sure that her school knows where she is. I'm not sure anybody knows where she is. Even just that could have prevented a significant amount of dominoes that fell from March to August that led to the situation she was in at her passing.
I do want to say this because I think it needs to be said. I do know that there were a lot of friends and not family, friends of the family and friends of my sister that had a lot of predatory behaviors. So I feel like, unfortunately, by my sister not having a place to stay, she fell victim to those helping hands. And that aids in them not saying anything because now, my sister is a victim that they can monopolize off of.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that too, I'm going to let you say that part, but
Yeah.
but yeah.
There, as it's hard to hear this for so many reasons, but as we work in the nonprofit world and we do social services, and just to hear that there were so many misses, I think that if anything, like, people who are in this world should, in this, any type of service, whether it's a teacher or CPS or even just someone who distributes food to families in need, like, you have to just be aware and be looking for situations and know that no matter what, speak up and speak out and to stop things like this from happening. I think that it's so hard to hear that, knowing that there could have been something done in so many ways. But we have a few more minutes, and before we conclude, I wanted to kind of know, Angel, what sparked your advocacy now? I mean, you were the one who notified that your sister was missing, and now you're the one finding justice for her. What is it that in the last year or so sparked you to get back into this and really be the fighter that you are?
Honestly, I didn't have a choice. I think I really never grieved my sister being gone. I actually, a couple of years ago, not Google, I searched on Facebook to see maybe if she was out there somewhere. But I think internally, something just didn't feel right. Just the lack of responsiveness from the police department, the stories that were put out, it was just like something didn't sit right as far as, trusting the system to do what was necessary. And I think a lot of it was me being naive because I truly did not, I couldn't have guesstimated that I would have had to fought so hard just to get a little bit of traction. Um, Basically, I just started out just trying to get definite answers. Yeah, I'm trusting you guys to do your job, but you say you're going to call me back and it's been, time has passed and you don't get back. And so I just felt like I had to kind of, put on my armor and just kind of go to war to, just to see what could be done, maybe something they missed. And in doing so, so much just got uncovered, and I realized in a short time frame that I have to be present. And I'm a private person. I actually just updated my Facebook profile picture after almost 3 years because I'm like, okay, now people are like, messaging me and like, oh, you're pregnant. No, that was my almost 3-year-old now. But I'm not really big into social media, and I'm definitely not big on sharing my personal life. So um, I realized that the only way that I would get traction was to make the world care. And that meant that I would have to grieve, heal, fight in the public, you know. Um, I had to make the world know who my sister was, because unfortunately, so little effort has been put into remembering her and remembering her in a positive manner where I had to kind of rewrite her narrative, and in doing so, I just uncovered so much, even down to her name, where her death certificate is incorrect, her gravestone is incorrect, so, and I didn't even know that. Not only did I not know that I would have to fight for my sister, I didn't know that this is a thing that people are doing. I wasn't into podcasts. I wasn't really into Twitter. And since I've been on Twitter and, even on Instagram, there's so many families that are doing the exact same thing. So many families have to fight to make their families relevant because they're still missing or their case is still unsolved. And unfortunately, so many families are doing the job that the police department should be doing. They're doing interviews, they're investigating. And, it's crazy that, I had to kind of put down my little nice girl armor and put on this, big tough armor because I realized that until you force people to care, like collectively, there's people that genuinely care, but as a whole, until you force them to care, they're going to feed you whatever they want to feed you. And that's what I witnessed. That's why I've kind of had to really just be firm with the media because even up until like last month, somebody reached out and they started, Georgia, Georgia, Georgia. And then halfway through the email, they're like, yeah, Georgiana, Georgiana, Georgiana. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, but we're not going to be interviewing with you. Like, you can't even fact check your email to make sure that you're saying my sister's name correct when that has been an issue for the last 23 years, So I honestly think it was just time, like I've just kind of had this hidden life where, I knew enough people knew me as Georgia's little sister where whenever I did become public, it would be like, oh my gosh, and I like I said, I'm a private person. Like, I don't like all that attention. I don't like being on camera, but something in me, and I really, between God and my sister, it was just like so much happened in such strange and crazy manners where it was just like, as soon as I would make a step, something was revealed. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like the timing is just so crazy, and why now? That's like the $1,000,000 question, but I feel like enough has come together where we're at a place where my sister's case is at a place where it can be solved. So much information that I didn't know existed. And even putting people in the proper light that I thought were friends and are more so enemies, even family members, certain roles that they played. I just feel like, my sister is at a place where she's at peace. That's just a little personal experience that I had recently. And, now is her time for justice.
Well, I think that, you said you need to get people collectively to care. And I think that you're doing that. I mean, I think that the people who do care want to know how we can help you. For us who might not know who actually was involved in this, but how can we help? I know you have a website. Maria, can you give us the full name of the website and all of your social media handles and all of that?
Yeah, so the website is georgialeemoses.com. Angel, she's head on that. She takes care of updating that. But then we have Justice for Georgia Lee Moses. All of our handles are Justice for Georgia Lee Moses. I do want to clarify one thing. We will be keeping all of our social media as Justice for Georgia Lee Moses, even though it has come to light that that is not in fact her name. Reason being, the momentum is built around that. And what's most important for us is presence, to be seen, to be shared, and to honor her as well. So we do have the hashtags Justice for Georgia Lee Moses. We ask that if you are going to help share things on social media, that you pair it with her real name, Georgia Leah Moses. That is the second hashtag. Those two should always be together. Honor her identity as well as the adopted name that she was given. There's a whole story behind that, and we plan to tell it, but right now that's just where we stand with that. All of everything on Facebook, everything on Instagram. Twitter is not that though, right? Twitter is
Catch My Sister's Killer.
Catch My Sister's Killer. But everything else is Justice for Georgia Lee Moses. And then georgialeemoses.com. So you can keep up to date. It's better to keep up to date with our social media. The website doesn't get updated nearly as much as Facebook or Instagram. We are actually working on a few projects in Georgia's name, one of which we are reaching out to her friends and family or anyone in the public who thinks that they might have information or have something to contribute that are willing to be interviewed by us, recorded. We record everything because for continuity purposes, for looking back on it, information sharing and such, we want to make sure that we have accurate accounts of what people have actually said to us. So we don't want to be paraphrasing anybody. We are encouraging you to reach out to us. We have a Gmail address as well if you prefer to stay anonymous. It's whathappenedtogeorgialee@gmail.com. If you have any tips, you're welcome to send them there. We understand that a lot of people are wary of speaking to police, especially right now in the very active climate of police in public. So we understand that that's not always an avenue that people can take. So we want you to reach out to us anonymously or with your name, is either one, whatever your comfort level is. So yeah.
And you do have a GoFundMe, and that is also, I think, linked through your website and probably other social media. And I know that if anyone who donates, you will be contributing to being able to get a private investigator, a lawyer. These things cost money, and we really want to see justice for Georgia. So please go to the GoFundMe, contribute what you can. We're going to put in the chat on the Facebook the links to all of these so that you can have them directly and they'll be saved there. And there was a recent podcast by The Fall Line, so we can link that as well if you want a little bit more detail about this case. And I think that all of that is there. And just please remember, everyone, that, you know, Georgia, let's do her justice. Let's tell her story the way that Angel is telling her story. She is a beautiful soul inside and out, and it's time that everyone knows that, and we can, you know, finally maybe close some of this for Angel and her friends and family, and get justice for Georgia. Angel and Maria, is there anything else you would like to add?
Thank you to everyone that continues to be an ally. You know, it's not easy to grieve in the public eye, you know, and to take on the role of trying to actually solve my sister's murder. You know, there's so much that I encounter. You know, people submit tips, they submit things that they think might be relevant, and you know, it gets heavy really quickly. Some of the details are graphic, and you know, just to have a community of people that genuinely care, that means more than, you know, people probably will ever understand unless you're in that scenario. Those are, you know, those little bits of the weights being taken off, you know. So thank you. And thank you, you know, to you and to Katie for just the opportunity to continue to share my sister's story. Um, and I just want to put this out there to, you know, anybody, just be mindful, you know, because it's it's not easy to be a family member of somebody who was murdered. It'll never be easy, but to have to live with that day in and day out, you know, I've seen a few different instances where people just say things, and I honestly think, you know, we need an etiquette class because, you know, I was taught if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. And with social media, people just say some of everything, you know, even on the press release that was put out about my sister, people are just speculating. And, you know, I understand true crime is like a big deal now, but we're actually living it, you know, and just be mindful of what you say and where you say it. Because people like me, people like, you know, her friends and my other family members, you have to read that, you know, so.
Well, thank you so much for both of you coming on and sharing her story and your story. And I know that your family of virtual people who care about Georgia has grown tonight. And so thank you guys. And for those viewing, if you have any questions or information, please email their Gmail, and hopefully you can get all the information that we put in the chat. And thank you all for listening tonight. And we will see you on another community conversation on race later this month. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.